right, folks, ready to dive deep. Today, it's React versus Vue.js.
Yeah, the front-end face-off everyone's talking about.
It's a classic debate. And honestly, having worked with both, I think we can shed some light beyond just, which one's the cool kid right now.
Exactly. It's about finding the right tool for the job.
Exactly. So, just to get us all on the same page, we've got React.js, developed by Meta, the Facebook folks, known for its flexibility, a huge ecosystem of tools and libraries, and of course, JSX,
Right, that blend of HTML-like stuff right in your JavaScript.
which I have to admit threw me off at first.
It's a different way of thinking, for sure.
On the other side, we've got Vue.js, created by Evan You, and this one's all about simplicity. Developer-friendly, intuitive. It just wants to make your life easier.
And it's gained a lot of traction for that very reason. Easy to pick up, quick to get a project going.
Plus, Vue.js is independent, no big corporation behind it. That appeals to some folks, especially those concerned about data privacy.
Interesting point, yeah. Shows their commitment to open source. But speaking of choosing, why would someone go for Vue.js in the first place?
Lay it on us. What makes Vue.js so appealing?
I'd say it's approachability. If you know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you're like halfway there already. The syntax is super consistent, makes development smooth, and it has official plugins for things like routing, so handling navigation between pages.
So if I'm a little intimidated by complex setups or I just want to get a project up and running ASAP, Vue.js is a good starting point.
Absolutely. It cuts out a lot of that initial friction. Plus, it's smaller than React, loads faster, good for projects where optimization is a big deal.
Performance, always a hot topic. But before we go there, let's flip the script. Why is React.js so popular? What's its draw?
Well, there's JSX, like we mentioned, that HTML-like code right in your JavaScript components.
Took me a while to wrap my head around that one, but once I did, I saw how it could make things more organized.
It's a different way of building UIs, that's for sure. More declarative, you describe what you want the UI to look like, React handles the how.
Less manual tinkering, more big picture focus. Makes sense.
And React is great for SEO, crucial for any web app that wants to be found. Vue.js can be a bit trickier on that front.
Ah, yes, SEO, the silent killer of websites. But we can't forget mobile. We live in a mobile-first world. How do they stack up there?
React.js has React Native. Build native iOS and Android apps using your React knowledge.
Yeah.
Huge advantage. No need to learn completely new stuff for mobile.
It's like a superpower, right? One skill set for both web and mobile.
Super powerful. No surprise, so many companies, especially startups, love React for that reason. Mobile apps are just essential these days.
Makes sense. Doesn't Vue.js have something for mobile too, though?
It does. It can use Weeks. It's for cross-platform mobile apps. It's an option, but
Yep.
it hasn't really taken off like React Native.
So React Native is the champ there, but maybe Weeks is one to watch.
Yep.
Now, I'm curious about the day-to-day experience. What's it like working with these frameworks?
Both have their quirks, of course, but overall, the development experience is pretty smooth for both. React is very flexible, modular, lots of freedom in how you structure things.
That could be good or bad, I imagine. Too much freedom can lead to chaos, right?
Exactly. Vue.js is more like convention over configuration. It has a clear structure, good for beginners or teams who really value consistency.
Like guardrails to keep you on track, huh?
Good way to put it. And for tooling and debugging, React's developer tools are excellent. Inspect components, track state changes, find those pesky bugs easily.
Debugging can be a nightmare, so good tools are a lifesaver.
Vue.js has its own dev tools too. They're helpful, just not as mature, maybe.
Okay, so both are solid on tooling, but maybe React has a slight edge. Now, we can't ignore popularity. React.js seems to be the more popular choice, judging by surveys and job postings.
True, it has a bigger market share right now. Lots of reasons for that. Big companies like Facebook using it early on, the huge ecosystem. And React Native's popularity plays a role too.
So it kind of feeds itself, right? More companies using it, more demand for developers, more developers learning it.
Exactly. But popularity isn't everything. Vue.js is growing fast, its community is super passionate, and that simplicity, ease of use, that's a big draw for a lot of people.
Like the underdog quietly building up strength. But beyond popularity, let's talk performance. Speed, efficiency, how do they compare?
Both are known for being performant, and both use a virtual DOM. That's a key part of how they achieve that speed.
Okay, for those who don't speak developer, what's the virtual DOM all about?
Think of the DOM, the document object model, as the blueprint of your web page. Changing it directly can be slow. The virtual DOM is a copy, a lightweight one, and it lets React and Vue.js figure out the most efficient way to update the real DOM.
Like rearranging furniture without making a mess everywhere.
Exactly. That's why both feel so smooth and responsive. Now, while both do well, Vue.js often has a slight edge in component creation and updates. Its reactivity system is super optimized, handles data changes, and re-renders very quickly.
So for apps with a lot of dynamic content, real-time stuff, Vue.js might be the way to go.
It's definitely a strong contender in those cases. And generally, Vue.js is a bit lighter, so initial load times can be faster too.
Interesting. React has its strengths, but Vue.js holds its own, especially for certain types of apps.
And that's the takeaway. It always depends on the specific project needs.
Well said. One more thing before we move on. Community support. How important is that, and how do they compare?
It's crucial, especially in the open source world. Drives innovation, helps when you're stuck, keeps the framework alive.
Like a global network of friends who all love the same tech and are willing to help?
Exactly. React has a massive community thanks in part to Meta and those early big company adopters. Tons of resources online. Someone's probably already solved the problem you're facing.
That's comforting, especially if you're new to the framework, like a safety net.
Huge advantage. Vue.js's community might be smaller, but it's passionate, welcoming, very helpful. And the documentation is praised for being super clear and comprehensive.
Sounds like both have strong communities invested in their success.
Definitely. Shows the quality of both frameworks, that they've earned that respect from developers.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Origins, philosophies, performance, mobile, community. But let's bring it back to you, the listener.
Time for the practical stuff.
Exactly. Imagine you're starting a new project today. What are the key questions to ask when choosing between React and Vue.js? What are you building? What's your team's experience? How important is performance? Mobile support? These are all things to think about.
No one-size-fits-all answer. It depends on your needs and what you prioritize.
And that's the beauty of front-end. There's always something new to learn, new tools, new challenges.
Always evolving, always exciting.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll keep diving deeper, more nuanced comparisons, real-world use cases. Stick around.
Welcome back. So we laid the groundwork, talked about the basic differences between React and Vue.js. Now, let's get into something crucial for any app that's going to grow: scalability.
Yeah, those little side projects we start. They have a way of becoming something much bigger, more complex. How do these frameworks handle that? Managing large code bases, intricate data flows.
That's where architecture and state management come in. React, with its focus on components, really lends itself to building complex apps. You break down the UI into smaller, reusable pieces.
Like Lego blocks you can assemble and rearrange.
Exactly. And for managing the data, the state of your app, React has this idea of smart and dumb components. Smart ones handle logic, API calls, and pass data down to the dumb ones, which are all about presentation.
Separation of concerns, classic. Brains and beauty, each doing their thing.
Works like a charm for managing complexity. React doesn't force a specific state management solution, but there are popular libraries like Redux, Context API that provide structure, especially as the app grows.
Options, always good. Choose what fits your project and team. What about Vue.js scalability and state management?
Vue.js takes a slightly different approach, but the goal's the same: keeping your code organized as things scale up. One of Vue.js's core strengths is its reactivity. You change data, the UI updates automatically, like magic, but under the hood, it's tracking dependencies, re-rendering only what needs to change.
Less manual work, let the framework handle it. Sounds nice.
Makes it really enjoyable to work with. And for state management, Vue.js has Vuex built in. Works seamlessly with that reactivity system.
So it's like it comes with a state management system right out of the box.
Exactly. Keeps your data flow consistent. And for smaller projects, you might not even need a separate library. Vue.js's reactivity can handle a lot on its own.
So both have solid approaches to scaling, but with their own flavors. React's more flexible, Vue.js more integrated, more opinionated maybe.
Good summary. The best choice depends on your team's experience, how complex the app is, personal preferences too.
No one right answer, like most things in software. Right tool for the job. Now, we've mentioned performance a bunch, but let's dig deeper into how React and Vue.js handle rendering, optimization, especially for apps where performance is critical.
Makes sense. Users care about speed. Nobody wants to wait for pages to load or deal with lag.
Absolutely. So let's peek under the hood. Performance nuances.
Both use the virtual DOM, that's key, but they approach updates and re-rendering differently. React uses a reconciliation algorithm to compare the virtual DOM with the real one and figure out the most efficient way to apply changes.
Like playing spot the difference to minimize the changes needed.
Perfect analogy. It's very optimized, but sometimes, with tons of components updating frequently, it can be a bottleneck.
So if I'm building something data heavy, lots of real-time updates, I need to be careful about how I structure components, manage data flow to avoid performance hits.
Exactly. That's where optimization techniques come in, things like React should component update lifecycle method or memoization. You can fine-tune when components re-render, prevent unnecessary updates.
Giving React hints about what's important and what's not.
Exactly. Vue.js, with its reactivity, takes a different approach. It tracks dependencies between data and components so it knows automatically what needs to re-render when data changes. Super efficient, especially with lots of dynamic content.
So it's like Vue.js is always listening, proactively updating only what needs to change.
Great way to put it. This is why Vue.js often beats React in benchmarks that focus on component updates and rendering speed.
So React gives more control, but Vue.js can be more efficient out of the box.
That's the trade-off. React's powerful and flexible, but sometimes needs more manual optimization. Vue.js, more automatic, maybe less control over the fine details.
Trade-offs, always trade-offs. Picking the right approach for your project and team.
Absolutely. And speaking of trade-offs, let's talk about the learning curve, the developer experience.
Because at the end of the day, we want to enjoy working with these tools, not tear our hair out.
Right. So, learning curve. Vue.js is generally considered more beginner-friendly. The syntax is intuitive, documentation is excellent, easier to pick up overall.
So if I'm new to front-end frameworks, coming from HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Vue.js is a good place to start.
Definitely. Even experienced developers often appreciate how simple and easy Vue.js is.
Sometimes you just want a framework that gets out of the way and lets you build.
Exactly. React can be a bit tougher initially. JSX, component lifecycle methods, state management. Takes some time to grasp those concepts.
Yeah, I remember when I first started with React. What is going on here? But once it clicked, it was like a whole new level.
It's a shift in thinking. Worth the effort for large projects or when you need React's ecosystem.
Like learning a new language. Takes time, but then you can express yourself in ways you couldn't before.
Good analogy. That's what keeps development interesting. Always something new to learn, new challenges.
Speaking of challenges, what about testing? How do they approach that?
Testing is crucial, right? Catching bugs early, making sure your code does what it's supposed to.
Saves us from those late-night debugging marathons.
For sure. Both React and Vue.js are good for unit testing and end-to-end testing. React has Jest, a very popular testing library made by Facebook.
A testing framework specifically for React, basically.
Pretty much. Integrates really well with React's components, all the tools you need for writing and running tests. Vue.js doesn't have one dominant framework, but there are popular options like Vue Test Utils, and even Jest can be used with Vue.js.
More flexibility with Vue.js, but maybe more research to find the right tools.
Yeah, that's fair. And writing tests is pretty similar for both. Unit tests for individual components, end-to-end tests, the whole app flow.
So no matter which you choose, testing is covered. That peace of mind is important.
Absolutely. As we wrap up this part, I want to talk about something I'm really interested in. The future of these frameworks. What are you seeing? Where do you think React and Vue.js are headed?
Great question. Front-end is always changing, new tech, new patterns. Frameworks need to adapt.
It's a constantly moving target, but both React and Vue.js have been resilient. They adapt, embrace new ideas, incorporate community feedback.
Not resting on their laurels, huh? Still pushing the boundaries.
Definitely. One trend is this focus on performance and developer experience.
Makes sense. Users want speed. Developers want tools that are enjoyable and efficient.
Exactly. You see this in the new features they're adding. React is working on things like concurrent mode, suspense, improving how it handles asynchronous stuff, data fetching, smoother user experiences.
So it's like React is getting smarter behind the scenes.
Exactly. And Vue.js is on its next major version, Vue.js 3. Performance enhancements, a more flexible API.
Both actively evolving, investing in the future.
Another trend is server-side rendering, SSR, and static site generation, SSG, big for performance and SEO.
For those who don't know, what are those exactly?
Server-side rendering means the initial rendering of your page happens on the server, not in the user's browser. Faster load times, better SEO, because search engines can see that content right away.
Like giving your website a head start.
Exactly. Static site generation goes further, pre-rendering the entire site into static HTML files, super fast, very efficient hosting.
A supercharged website ready to go.
React has Next.js for that. Vue.js has Nuxt.js. Both frameworks have you covered for building high-performance sites.
No matter which you choose, you can build those blazing fast, SEO-friendly websites. Good to know.
These trends point to a future where web apps are even faster, more interactive, more accessible.
Exciting time to be a front-end developer. We're going to wrap up part 2 here. When we come back, we'll look at some real-world examples of React and Vue.js in action, talk about their strengths and weaknesses in different scenarios, and leave you with some final thoughts. All right, welcome back for the final round of our React versus Vue.js deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from performance to architecture, even peeking into the future, not to see how this all plays out in the real world.
Right, we can geek out on the technical details all day, but it's all about how these tools perform when building real apps.
Exactly. So let's say we're building a big social media platform. Millions of users, real-time updates, tons of interaction. What are we thinking when choosing between React and Vue.js for something like that?
Good example really highlights the strengths. In that case, React's maturity, the huge ecosystem, its proven track record with complex UIs. Those are big pluses.
Yeah, all those features, news feeds, chat, notifications.
Mm-hmm.
You need a solid framework that can handle it. React's experience there is a big point in its favor.
And the community, when you're at that scale, it's invaluable. So much knowledge, pre-built components, support when you get stuck.
Like having a global team of experts backing you up can be a lifesaver on a tight deadline.
For sure. Now, it doesn't mean Vue.js couldn't handle it. It performs well, scales well, and it's developer-friendly, so onboarding new team members could be smoother, especially if they're not already React experts.
So, no easy answer. It depends on the project, the team, the resources.
Exactly. The beauty of front-end, right. Rarely one right way. Understanding the trade-offs is key.
Okay, let's change gears. Imagine a smaller project, a lightweight single-page app, a personal finance dashboard, or a simple online store. How does the React versus Vue.js decision change?
I think Vue.js might shine even brighter there. Simplicity, ease of use, focus on performance, perfect fit for those kinds of projects. Get up and running fast, build a slick UI, great performance, without needing all the complexity of React.
Right tool for the job. You don't need a sledgehammer to crack a walnut.
Exactly. Vue.js is approachable even for devs new to frameworks. You can focus on the app logic, the user experience, without getting lost in boilerplate code.
Wins for both developers and users. Devs have a good experience. Users get a fast, responsive app.
Another area where Vue.js might have an edge is anything with lots of dynamic content, real-time updates. Think a stock trading app or collaborative editing. That reactivity system really shines, handles changes efficiently.
So if real-time is a must-have, Vue.js is worth a serious look. It's interesting how the strengths of each framework become clearer when you think about specific use cases.
Really emphasizes the importance of understanding the underlying principles, the trade-offs. It's not about chasing the hype, it's about picking the tool that aligns with your goals, your team's skills.
All right, last thing. We talked about the future of these frameworks, performance improvement, server-side rendering, all that. Long-term, how do you see React and Vue.js thriving, or are there challenges ahead?
Good question. I'm optimistic. Both have strong foundations. They've shown they can adapt, embrace new ideas.
So they're not standing still, they're moving with the times.
Absolutely. Always improving, listening to the community, finding new ways to make things better. That's what makes me confident about their future.
Good to hear, because we invest so much time learning these tools. It's nice to know those skills will have lasting value.
And the community, that's another big factor. Both have amazing communities, contributing, supporting, creating resources. It's a big part of what makes them special.
Well said. So as we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with this. We've talked a lot about React and Vue.js, but the best way to really understand them is to use them, build something.
Hands-on experience, that's the key. Pick a project you're excited about. Choose the framework that feels right and just start creating. You'll learn a ton, and who knows, you might discover your new favorite tool.
That's the fun of front-end development. Always exploring, learning, pushing the limits of what's possible on the web.
So to everyone out there, keep building, keep experimenting, keep learning.
And until next time, happy coding.